The term passport bros refers to a growing community of men, often from Western countries, who travel abroad, especially to developing countries, seeking romantic or sexual relationships. The phenomenon is characterized by men who believe they can find women with more traditional values, often citing dissatisfaction with modern dating norms in their home countries. The significance of this concept is highlighted by the story of Floyd Wallace, an alleged passport bro whose arrest and actions have drawn criticism and media attention, particularly in Brazil, where local media has labeled such travelers as criminals. The importance of this phenomenon lies in its intersection with issues of globalization, cultural exchange, and exploitation. It raises questions about power dynamics, gender expectations, and ethical considerations in cross-cultural relationships. For instance, many of these men argue that they seek genuine connections, while critics suggest that such pursuits often exploit socioeconomic disparities, with women in developing countries seen as more submissive or traditional due to financial necessity rather than personal preference. Examples of the passport bros phenomenon in action include online communities and forums where men share tips and experiences on where and how to meet women abroad, often emphasizing countries in Southeast Asia and Latin America. Additionally, there are travel packages marketed to these men, promising romantic introductions and often blurring the line between dating and sex tourism. Supporters of the passport bros movement argue that these men are simply looking for more authentic, less transactional relationships and are exercising their right to seek happiness wherever they find it. They emphasize cultural differences and critique Western societal norms that they feel have altered gender roles and expectations in undesirable ways. However, the phenomenon is fraught with challenges and controversies. Critics highlight the potential for cultural insensitivity and exploitation, with local women often financially disadvantaged and viewed through a problematic, commodified lens. This perspective raises ethical concerns about consent and genuine agency in such relationships. Furthermore, there's the potential for legal and moral transgressions, as exemplified by the allegations faced by Floyd Wallace. The passport bros concept closely ties to broader discussions in the main topic regarding exploitation, consent, and international relationships. It provokes critical analysis of how cultural perceptions and social privileges impact relational dynamics. It also invites scrutiny of whether such pursuits genuinely represent cultural admiration or are symptomatic of deeper issues within Western social constructs concerning gender and romance. The Floyd Wallace case overview focuses on a significant incident within the broader context of the passport bros. Passport bros is a term used to describe men, primarily from Western countries, who travel abroad in search of relationships, often citing cultural differences and dissatisfaction with dating in their home countries as their motivation. The Floyd Wallace case encapsulates the potential dark side of this movement, highlighting alarming activities involving the exploitation of vulnerable individuals. The significance of exploring Floyd Wallace's arrest is underscored by how it serves as a cautionary tale about the moral and ethical boundaries that can be crossed under the guise of cultural exploration. It exposes the risks inherent in the passport bros phenomenon, where the movement's intention to foster genuine cross-cultural relationships is overshadowed by actions that exploit power imbalances and harm local communities. One pertinent example of this is Wallace's alleged involvement in the exploitation of young Brazilian girls. His actions have been covered extensively by the local media, which has characterized passport bros like Wallace as criminals rather than cultural explorers. Another example is the backlash against such individuals, often sparked by protests from women's groups advocating for the protection of the local populace from predatory behaviors. Although the passport bros concept may have been initially propelled by individuals sincerely seeking love and connection, the actions of a few like Wallace have drawn severe criticism. Proponents argue that cultural exchange can lead to mutual understanding and beneficial relationships. However, these views are heavily disputed by those who see the movement as a modern form of colonialism, where men abuse their relative wealth and privilege in foreign lands to engage in unethical conduct. Challenges and controversies surrounding this issue are significant. Critics contend that passport bros often perpetuate stereotypes and engage in exploitation, calling into question the ethical implications of such behaviors. In contrast, some supporters argue against generalized accusations, claiming that the actions of a minority should not tarnish the entire movement. The Floyd Wallace case makes a profound connection to broader discussions regarding ethical tourism and the responsibilities of travelers. It highlights the importance of responsible cultural interactions and the dire consequences of ignoring them. The case urges a re-examination of motives and behaviors among travelers to promote more respectful and equitable international relationships, ultimately shining a light on the darker elements of the passport bro phenomenon and sparking debate on how to address and mitigate these risks. The concept of media coverage in Brazil and worldwide concerning the arrest of Floyd Wallace for the exploitation of young girls highlights the role of journalism and public discourse in shaping perceptions of events and issues. Media coverage is the reporting of newsworthy events by journalists and media outlets, which informs and influences public opinion. In the context of Wallace's arrest, Brazilian media coverage not only brought attention to the alleged crimes, but also scrutinized the broader phenomenon of passport bros, a colloquial term for men who travel internationally, often to poorer countries, with the intention of exploiting perceived privileges, including illicit activities. The significance of this media coverage lies in its power to impact public awareness and spark international discourse on ethical tourism and exploitation. The critical portrayal of passport bros as criminals by Brazilian media underscores the moral and legal implications of their activities, prompting discussions on consent, exploitation, and international relations. By showcasing these issues, media coverage can lead to heightened accountability and potentially influence policy changes or international cooperation to address such transgressions. One real-world example of media influence can be found in the increased scrutiny of sex tourism in countries like Thailand and the Philippines, driven by both local and international media reports. This coverage has led to stronger law enforcement cooperation and stricter regulations to combat exploitation. Another example is the Me Too movement, which was amplified by media coverage, leading to global discussions on sexual harassment and systemic change in various industries. Support for the critical stance of the media comes from human rights organizations and anti-exploitation advocates who see media exposure as crucial for raising awareness and catalyzing change. However, challenges arise in the form of potential media bias, sensationalism, or the oversimplification of complex issues, which can skew public perception and hinder nuanced understanding. Alternative viewpoints may question the fairness of labeling all passport bros as criminals, arguing for differentiation between those engaging in consensual adult interactions and those accused of illicit activities. There may also be diplomatic tensions between countries over how media portrayal affects national image and tourism. Overall, media coverage of Wallace's case and the broader implications for passport bros is deeply interconnected with international travel ethics, law enforcement, and cultural perceptions. It influences public opinion and policy, potentially steering efforts towards more responsible tourism practices and better protective measures against exploitation worldwide. The heading Legal Implications and Charges delves into the legal ramifications associated with the arrest of Floyd Wallace and the broader accusations against so-called passport bros for exploiting young girls. Legal implications in this context refer to the possible criminal charges and legal consequences stemming from actions deemed illicit under both local and international laws. In this specific case, the charges likely involve sexual exploitation and trafficking, which carry severe penalties due to their grave nature and the violation of human rights they represent. Exploring the legal implications is vital to understanding the broader narrative surrounding passport bros, a term often used to describe individuals who travel internationally, purportedly in search of sexual encounters that are illegal or frowned upon in their home countries. The significance here lies in the impact such behaviors have on the individuals involved, local communities, and international relations. When the media labels these individuals as criminals, it brings to light the extent of the problem and presses for stricter legal actions. Real-world applications of these legal implications can be seen in various international cases. For example, the conviction of British citizen Richard Huckle, who was sentenced to multiple life terms in 2016 for abusing children in Malaysia, underscores how legal systems can collaborate internationally to address such crimes. Another case is that of Canadian Peter Dalglish, a renowned humanitarian worker who was arrested and convicted in Nepal for child sexual abuse, illustrating how countries are cracking down on foreign nationals exploiting local populations. Law enforcement officials and advocacy groups argue for stringent laws and international collaboration, emphasizing that such issues should be tackled with a zero-tolerance approach. They contend that only through legal repercussions can the cycle of exploitation be broken, offering justice and protection for victims. However, this topic is not without its controversies. Critics might argue that the media's portrayal of passport bros as blanket criminals overlooks the complexity of international travel and relationships. Some believe this narrative could lead to xenophobia or unjust profiling of travelers. The exploration of legal implications and charges connects significantly to societal awareness and policy reforms. Understanding the legal framework and challenges provides insights into the accountability measures necessary to combat exploitation and hold offenders responsible. It also influences how communities both locally and abroad respond to such issues, shaping future legislation and preventative strategies, thereby reinforcing the need for thorough legal scrutiny and informed public discourse on the subject.